Picture this, a normal, bustling hospital emergency room. But suddenly, the entire medical infrastructure is completely overwhelmed. And we're not talking about a massive car pileup or a natural disaster here, but a terrifying, invisible, cascading chemical threat. People are literally stumbling in, gasping for air, their vision dimming, muscles twitching completely out of control. Well, this is the terrifying reality of mass exposure to cholinesterase inhibitors. That's a class of highly toxic chemicals that actually includes certain pesticides and deadly chemical warfare nerve agents. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to break down exactly how these invisible saboteurs cause such catastrophic damage, starting from the sheer chaos of a community disaster, all the way down to the microscopic short circuits they trigger right inside your own body.
Now, when we think of hazmat situations, we usually picture ambulances, paramedics, and heavy-duty hazmat suits, orderly field triage, right? But in a real chemical emergency, chaos rules. The source material reveals a really surprising reality. A lot of chemically exposed patients actually transport themselves. They don't wait around for the paramedics. Instead, they catch a ride, jump in their own cars, or literally just walk straight through the hospital's front doors. They completely bypass the emergency medical services system, bringing that deadly contamination right into the ER.
So this completely flips standard disaster prep on its head. Because patients self-transport, they just show up. No advance notice. They lack any kind of critical field triage, and most dangerously, they entirely skip the field decontamination showers. What does that mean for us? It means every single hospital in a community, not just the big trauma centers, has to be universally prepared for these sudden, unannounced arrivals of toxic casualties because the danger isn't just to the patients, it's a massive threat to the healthcare workers themselves. Here is the roadmap for today's Explainer. We're taking a macro to macro journey. We'll cover 1. The chaos of exposure. 2. Hijacking the nervous system. 3. A tale of two receptors. 4. The cholinergic toxidrome. And finally, 5. Delayed dangers and death. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. The chaos of exposure. Community preparedness.
Dealing with these victims requires absolutely serious, evidence-based, community-level planning. We're talking coordination across fire, police, EMS, and every single local hospital. You simply can't assume the fire department is going to scrub everyone down in the field before they hit the ER. Listen to this direct quote from the medical guidance. Patients may arrive without having been decontaminated, and hospital staff may become secondarily contaminated. Because the EMS system gets bypassed so often, a hospital might unknowingly put an exposed patient right into a standard exam room. Staff rushes in to help, completely unprotected, and boom, suddenly the nurses and doctors are casualties too. That is exactly why swift, in-hospital decontamination procedures are an absolute must.
Section 2. Hijacking the nervous system. The molecular mystery. Okay, to really grasp the clinical chaos we just talked about, we need to zoom way in and uncover how these saboteurs operate inside human biology. It all starts with acetylcholine. This is the primary neurotransmitter that drives the rapid stimulation of your postsynaptic nerves, your muscles, and your exocrine glands. It physically crosses the gap between nerves, acting as this incredibly precise chemical trigger that sparks your muscular and glandular systems into action. Now, normally, once that chemical message is delivered, you need a way to turn the signal off, right? Otherwise, your muscle would literally just stay flexed forever. The enzyme acetylcholinesterase acts kind of like a molecular vacuum cleaner. It rapidly breaks down the acetylcholine messenger into choline and acetic acid. This neatly clears out the synapse so our physiological switches don't get permanently stuck in the on position.
And that brings us to the villains of our story, cholinesterase inhibitors. These are chemicals, specifically organophosphorus compounds, like deadly nerve agents, or carbamates found in everyday insecticides, that actively seek out and bind to that vital cleanup enzyme. By occupying and blocking that enzyme, these toxic chemicals completely stop the breakdown of the acetylcholine messenger. You can see how the acetylcholinesterase inhibitor, that phosphorus molecule right there with the red oxygen, attaches directly onto the serine site of the cleanup enzyme. It just physically blocks the neurotransmitter from getting in. This causes an absolute catastrophic short circuit in the body. Because the enzyme is blocked, massive, highly toxic levels of acetylcholine rapidly build up at the nerve junctions. Your body's physiological switches are now jammed permanently in the on position.
Moving to Section 3, a tale of two receptors, nicotinic versus muscarinic.
So this massive buildup of neurotransmitter ravages the body by targeting two very distinct sets of cholinergic receptors. This creates a really complex, terrifying clinical picture.
Nicotinic receptors are your fast-acting switches. They're basically chemical-gated sodium channels that trigger rapid transmissions in our skeletal muscles. Muscarinic receptors, though, they're slower. They don't just initiate action, they modulate it. They use complex G proteins to control the intrinsic rhythmic activity of your smooth muscles, your cardiac conduction system, and your exocrine glands. Looking at them structurally, the nicotinic receptor on the left is a literal channel. When toxic levels of acetylcholine hit it, the channel just blasts open, sodium floods in, and the muscle gets stuck in a state of constant depolarization until it completely paralyzes. Conversely, the muscarinic receptor on the right doesn't have a channel. Instead, when excess chemical binds to it, it releases internal G proteins inside the cell to trigger prolonged changes in your organs and glands. We are looking at two fundamentally different structural pathways that both lead to bodily destruction.
Section 4. The cholinergic toxidrome. Decoding the symptoms. When both of these receptors, the nicotinic and muscarinic, are overwhelmed at the exact same time, it creates a terrifying full-body condition called the cholinergic toxidrome. To decode the rapid skeletal and sympathetic nervous system symptoms caused by the nicotinic receptors, medical folks use an incredibly catchy days-of-the-week mnemonic. Let's go through it. Monday is mydriasis, pupillary dilation. Tuesday is tachycardia, a super rapid heart rate. Wednesday is weakness, as those overstimulated muscles exhaust themselves. Thursday is hypertension, incredibly high blood pressure. And Friday is fasciculations, which are those visible, uncontrollable muscle twitches and jerks.
But hey, don't forget, the muscarinic receptors are under attack too, and they control the glands and smooth muscles. This results in incredibly messy, fluid-heavy parasympathetic effects. To remember these, we use the highly descriptive Dumbbell's mnemonic. D for defecation and U for urination. M is meiosis, painful constriction of the pupils. The B is for bronchospasm and bronchorrhea, meaning the lungs violently cramp up and fill with thick mucus. E is emesis, or vomiting. L is lacrimation, which is excessive tearing. And finally, S for intense salivation.
The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that the clinical presentation in any single patient is a chaotic tug of war. The exact signs and symptoms you'll see depend entirely on the specific chemical dose, how the person was exposed, and the wild balance of these opposing systemic stimulations. I mean, some effects raise the heart rate, others slow it right down. It's a total, overwhelming biological storm affecting literally every major organ system.
Which brings us to Section 5, Delayed Dangers and Death. The final blow. If emergency medical personnel cannot reverse the effects of these agents fast enough, the body simply cannot sustain the overwhelming stress of having all its biological switches jammed on. And when the final blow does come, it typically arrives via 4 specific catastrophic failures. While the heart, the brain, and the digestive system take massive hits, death from cholinesterase inhibitors is almost universally caused by 4 distinct mechanisms crashing the body's respiratory system all at once. Let's look closely at these 4 causes of respiratory failure. Number 1, bronchoconstriction. The smooth muscles in the airways aggressively cramp shut. Number 2, bronchorrhea. The exocrine glands in the respiratory tract overstimulate, effectively drowning the patient in thick mucoid secretions. Number 3, central respiratory depression, where the central nervous system just simply stops sending the signal to breathe. And finally, number 4, as the nicotinic receptors completely exhaust themselves, paralysis of the respiratory muscles sets in. It is a really grim combination of constricted airways, drowning in secretions, and paralyzed lungs. But here's where things get really wild and terrifying. Let's say a patient actually survives the acute chaos of day 0. Well, their battle isn't over. 1 to 4 days after that initial toxidrome resolves, patients can suddenly develop what's called intermediate syndrome, bringing potentially lethal respiratory muscle weakness right back. And then, 1 to 5 weeks later, they face organophosphate-induced delayed neuropathy, or OPIDN. That's a haunting condition with an unknown cause that can result in permanent pain and paralysis in the extremities. And this leads us to our final lingering thought. Beyond the initial disaster, beyond even the weeks of neuropathy, some patients actually develop OPCN, that's chronic neurotoxicity that can last for years. We're talking deep fatigue, depression, and a loss of fine motor coordination. So what happens to a community when the invisible shadow of chemical exposure leaves permanent neurological scars on its citizens long after the ER has been cleaned up? It's a profound question, and it's exactly what drives researchers to keep studying these devastating chemical saboteurs. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the science behind the headlines.